Previously on Along for the Ride.
Today is April 16th, unfortunately the last day locally for EPiC. You surprised me today. I was going to watch it alone today, and I looked, there you were standing there.
It is true. I did not want you to see it alone.
You've got a lot more questions. I'll try to answer some of them.
Prepare for the great interrogation. Welcome to the Mystery Train Studios. This is Along for the Ride,
where one lifelong Elvis fan and his curious bride share the music, the movies, and the stories behind them.
So today we're wrapping up all of my many questions about EPiC, Elvis Presley in concert.
I would definitely anticipate more questions knowing you. I doubt this will be the end of our conversations about EPiC.
I would agree. And by the way, we still haven't watched it at home, so we're going to pause it and analyze it, and there'll be many, many more questions. There's a scene where I think they're driving down a road, and there's a number of them in the vehicle. Elvis is in there. There was some comments made, what appeared to be sort of poking at Elvis. I guess it was supposed to be funny, but who was in the car, and what were they talking about when they said something to Elvis? Like, did you tell yourself you were going to sing this song? Or
I can't hear it all very well because they're playing another song like on top of the beginning of the conversation. I am 100% certain that there are people out there who know, but I don't know what song. But Elvis references that he had sang a few lines of some song that he wanted to sing, and I guess the band didn't pick up on it. So no one came in, and so he didn't sing it. Now, whether this actually happened or Elvis was just telling something funny for the guys, I don't know. The people visible in the car, I believe you can see Joe Esposito. I know you see Red West, and I believe there's some others, but those are the two that come to mind. Someone asks Elvis, "Did you tell them that you were going to sing it?" And he says, "Yes." And then Joe says, "Did you tell yourself?" And Elvis laughs and says, "No," or something like that. But it seemed like they were just having a fun time as far as I could tell.
There's a song that I believe Elvis says something along the lines of, "I like the Beatles." So it sounds like he's talking about, number one, the Beatles, the group The Beatles. Then I was curious, was that song after he had met them or before?
The song is Never Been to Spain, and that was originally released by a band called Three Dog Night. The line is in reference to the Beatles singing group. He says, "Now, I'm not a singer, so I'm not going to scare our three viewers away by singing," but Elvis says, "I've never been to England, but I kind of like the Beatles."
Okay.
Elvis met the Beatles in the mid-1960s. I want to say 1965. I'll throw it up on the screen. But I believe it was 1965 that he met the Beatles. So he was singing Never Been to Spain in 1972. It would have been 7 years later.
Did they ever do a collaboration? Or you think he was just singing the song and that's the line, so he sang it?
I think that he just liked the song and that happened to be the line, so he sang it. Okay. They did not collaborate. Now, he did sing a number of their songs, 3 of which were actually included in EPiC. They showed him singing Yesterday, which was originally released by Elvis on the On Stage album. They showed him singing Something, which Elvis did not release until 1973 on the Aloha from Hawaii album, but he was actually singing it in 1970 for the Las Vegas engagement. And then also in a medley with Little Sister, he was singing Get Back, which is a Beatles song. So he had combined those into a medley.
As you know, one of the favorite scenes in the movie is when he's singing with the bra on his head. I find that funny. Where was he? I neglected to ask that question.
For that scene, he was in Hampton Roads, Virginia, at the Hampton Coliseum.
Okay. And then there was another scene where I think he had female undergarments thrown at him and he picked those up. Was that the same venue or that was a different venue?
That was also in Hampton Roads.
Oh, okay.
So apparently the audience was... It's really wild there at the Hampton Coliseum.
That's very interesting because there's no other footage in EPiC where people are throwing undergarments. So either it doesn't exist or that venue, something was in the water, maybe. I don't know. They just wanted to throw their black undergarments at him.
I do not know this for a fact, but I have certainly read that the International Hotel kept a large supply of women's underwear, and I'm assuming available for purchase, but I don't know that part, available in the women's room due to them being given to Elvis during the shows. You're right. I don't think there's any other footage shown, and it's not really something I've really made notes of over the years. But I do feel like Elvis on Tour itself, the actual real movie, I can think of at least one scene where he's holding up underwear because he says, "Are these yours, honey?" I don't know about Las Vegas. I don't recall any Elvis That's the Way It Is footage or outtakes that I've seen anyway, and I've mostly only seen the officially released stuff. I don't recall seeing anything like that. But I guess that's something for us to hunt down. Since that's apparently a fascination.
I was just curious. And really, I was curious, was it two different venues? So it's even more interesting to me now that it's the same venues.
Yeah, apparently the audience was quite wild that night.
Maybe it was hot in the Coliseum. And
yeah, maybe it was. See, it was April 10th of 1972, which in Virginia could go either way. It could be hot. It is true. I guess we can probably look that up. We'll throw it on the screen as a... How warm was it in Hampton Roads, Virginia?
There's another scene. I asked him to have the house lights turned up, so I guess he could see the audience. But then he also, in several other places, has clips where he has stage fright. So then he kind of talked a little bit about, wow, there's a lot of them, and that was kind of scary. And so I just found it interesting. Why would you turn up the house lights, knowing that there's going to be a lot of people out there? And if that's scary to you, why would you do it?
The timing of it's interesting to me, and it's funny you bring that up, because I was thinking about that today. That footage of him bring the house lights up was 1972. The interview is also 1972, and he says it was about a year earlier. I guess Joe was showing him how to get on the stage during an intermission. He wasn't usually around during intermission to see the venue in that way, and for whatever reason it gave him, he wasn't expecting it. I don't know that they used that part in EPiC, but I feel like I've either heard Elvis say or I've read Elvis say that it made his knees shake, he got...
It was in EPiC.
It was in EPiC, okay. So then why would he then say, bring the house lights up? Maybe it was because of that. Maybe he wanted to face that. Or the other thing is a chance for him to really see everybody, because when the lights were down, as he says multiple times, he can only see the first row. Now, I believe at the Vegas show in 1970, I don't know if it's because they were filming, but it seemed like the lights were up a lot. But that may have just been because they were filming. It's kind of hard to tell on the screen, but the Vegas venue is much smaller than those Coliseums.
That makes sense. I think it was also, Hampton Roads, where he was laying on the floor, and he made a comment about something on the ceiling. What was he doing on the floor?
So that was a concert in Richmond, Virginia, at the Richmond Coliseum. It's been interesting to see EPiC because I've heard all of the concerts that are in EPiC in their entirety, but I've not seen them in their entirety. I had seen photos of the Richmond show of Elvis laying on his back, but I didn't know at what point in the concert, which I had heard, does this take place? Because it's not like Elvis says, okay, I'm going to lay on my back now. And so listening to the concert, at least to me, I'm not as smart as everyone out there. Listening to the concert, it's not as obvious. It's not obvious to me that he's laying down. But having gone back and reviewed that with the knowledge of EPiC in mind, it takes place after the song Polk Silent Annie, which is a very high energetic song. Even in 1972, Elvis was still putting a lot of energy into that one. So I think he was taking a breather and he decided to just lay down. I don't know for sure what he was looking at. I'm assuming it was something to do with the sound system. It may have been a huge batch of speakers or something that he was looking up at and was thinking, wow, if that falls, as he said, he'd be flatter than a pancake.
And this is a very random question. So I don't believe Elvis wrote any of his songs. Is that true?
For the most part, that is true. He did, and the extent is unknown, but he did contribute to a couple of songs. A song called You'll Be Gone, which was kind of a Latin rhythm song that I like a lot. And then another song, I believe, is Beyond the Reef, that he contributed to. Oh, but both of those songs, if I'm not mistaken, were primarily written by his friend Red West. but Elvis contributed in some way on those. And that's really it. Outside of that, he wasn't really a songwriter. Now, one thing Elvis did do is he liked to improvise his own funny lyrics to songs.
Yeah.
So you will come across that. When I see him do that, I think, maybe he could have been a songwriter. He just didn't have, either he didn't have the desire or the confidence to do it. And who knows, if he had lived longer, maybe he would have at some point given it a shot. Certainly, I would think Elvis could have done, at least for some of his movie songs, he could have done a better job than some of the ones that were being written for him.
There was that one song in EPiC where he rewrote something about you're bald and you wonder where your hair is or something like that.
That's
I
right.
think that was the only one I caught from a changing of the lyrics, but there might have been more. Because I don't know the song lyrics,
Right.
obviously.
Yeah, that's the big one. It's Are You Lonesome Tonight? And he changes it from do the chairs in your parlor seem empty and bare to do you gaze at your bald head and wish you had hair?
Got it.
He actually started using that line. You can hear him during rehearsals for the 1968 Elvis special, which we now call the comeback special. You can hear him during rehearsals. He throws that line in there. More famously, at his August 1969 engagement, and this was unfortunately not filmed, but they did record the audio, he sang that line, and then he couldn't get himself back together. Meanwhile, Cissy Houston, who was Whitney's mom, is in the background doing her soprano high voice singing as if nothing's going on, so it makes him laugh even more. And she just keeps going. So that's one of my very favorite Elvis performances. The 1970 iteration of that is good, but it's not nearly as funny as the 1969 laughing version of Are You Lonesome Tonight. But it was nice that we at least have something that they filmed where he uses that line.
Yeah, it definitely... One of the things I liked about EPiC is it showed his playful side in a variety of ways, from riding the bike like we talked about, or changing, ad-libbing some lyrics, or wearing the bra on his head, or I think they honored that playful side of him well.
And that is a great point, is I do think Baz's previous project, the Elvis movie from 2022 with Austin Butler and Tom Hanks, one of the places where it really whiffed, it didn't really show the fun-loving side of Elvis. I'm sure they had their reasons for that, but I'm glad that this sort of corrects that, where you can see that Elvis's life didn't just fall apart once he started performing in Vegas. He was still having a good time. I mean, we can debate what happened to him, but it didn't end in 1969 when he strode onto the Vegas stage.
So this is a little bit of EPiC trivia.
Okay.
Not necessarily Elvis. Was there any song, the credits don't count, was there any song that was actually played in full from beginning to end during EPiC?
I have not analyzed this yet, but there are, I believe, a few, but not many. You are right, it's not many. So at least the Little Sister Get Back medley,
Okay.
that was in its entirety as far as I could tell. Are You Lonesome Tonight, where he did the little joke, was in its entirety. At some point I'm going to look at this digital download version so that I can really analyze it. Possibly that's all right, although he talked over it, so I don't know if that disqualifies that. They didn't cut away, I don't think. Can't Help Falling in Love, I believe, was in full at the end. Suspicious Minds was definitely cut. Most of them were cut. There are a few that are full-length versions. Jonathan Redman, the editor, said that there are, I guess, multiple reasons for that. That part of it is just keeping people interested. Whereas someone like me, I personally might have preferred to hear the full version, but perhaps someone like you they just need to be hit with different things so they can, rather than, okay, wow, this is a really long song. Like Suspicious Minds can go 6 or 7 minutes during that engagement. And I think they cut it back. They didn't cut it significantly, but they cut at least a little bit out of Suspicious Minds.
Well, it's interesting from a non-fan perspective. They exposed us, non-fans, to a variety of his music versus maybe 7 or 8 songs
Right.
in full. So I don't know that was their objective, but I feel like it definitely gave a good flyover of the different kind of genres and even speeds, like we talked about in our prior show, how he would have one song slower in one portion of his life and then faster in a later portion.
The overall trend of most songs was the longer he performed them, the faster they got.
In one of the shots, there was footage of Elvis on the Ed Sullivan Show, and then behind him there were these people in plaid blazers that did not look like his normal backup singers or band or orchestra or anybody that looked familiar. So who were those folks?
Those were the Jordanaires, which were a gospel quartet back then that Elvis loved and was very honored to be able to use on many recordings from 1956 until I would say the late 1960s. Someone asked him, it's not in EPiC, but asked him at that Houston Astrodome concert why they weren't with him, and he said he couldn't get them out of Nashville, and that's because it was very lucrative for them to appear as backing singers on various people's albums in Nashville versus coming with Elvis live. Sometimes things happen for a reason, and I personally really like the groups that Elvis put together starting in 1969, which isn't a slam on what came before, but for instance, I love hearing the Sweet Inspirations, which is, I felt really helped to make his sound in the later years, at least his live sound.
In one of the concert scenes in EPiC, Elvis has a sheet of paper and he begins to read something along the lines of, with the following names, what was really on that sheet.
That was from his August 10th, 1970 opening show in Las Vegas. In Elvis, That's the Way It Is, the original version. Elvis is struggling with the lyrics to the song I Just Can't Help Believin', particularly the opening verse. As he gets ready to go on stage, he asks Charlie to have the lyrics ready. When he takes the lyrics, he makes that joke and then he talks about other things. But the song that he then goes into is I Just Can't Help Believin', because it's got the lyrics of that song. Because he really struggled with it, even though they show him rehearsing. So it's not like people would say, well, he didn't rehearse enough. We see him rehearsing it in That's the Way It Is. He really struggled with the lyrics. In That's the Way It Is, they don't even show that performance. They show one a day or two later of him singing the song, and he's still reading the lyrics. And part of it, I think, is a confidence thing.
Well, the last thing I have is a comment, not a question. I realized for this time that we watched EPiC, I really heard some parts better. This time I heard Elvis talking about certain gospel songs and that it takes them 4 to 5 hours to wind down from a concert, so sometimes they'll just go upstairs and start singing gospel songs because they find that to be very peaceful. I thought that was a really beautiful perspective that he had.
When I was watching that today, and that quote was also used in the original Elvis on Tour, which you haven't watched yet, it also made me sad because I was thinking it obviously helped him, but at the same time, I guess ultimately it didn't help him enough. Like, he ended up struggling, like we all do sometimes. And he relied on other things ultimately, which led to his early demise. And so it seemed like his heart was in the right place and he knew things that would help him, but I guess it had to be really difficult to be him. So I can't even begin to grasp what it would be like to be. I wouldn't want to be someone like that. That level of fame or people depending on you.
Or scrutiny.
Scrutiny as well.
That's another great example that he leaves us with. So we've talked about a couple, right? One is if you're told you're a failure by a teacher or whomever, that don't always believe that and just keep going. And then we've also talked about how someone who was unpopular in school because he was different, don't buy into that. Doesn't matter. Keep being who you are. And I think that's probably a good third one, that, faith, which is, he expressed that he had faith. He sang about Jesus. So we have to rely on that. He had faith. Sometimes it's really difficult to cling to the faith when everything around you is incredibly difficult. And to your point, he had a lot of pressures on him, I'm sure, from everyone, from the press, from family, friends, managers, agent, fans, people who did not most likely have his best first interest and heart. And so it's easy to get distracted from the one who always loves us and puts us first.
You've said it better than I could have, so that's a great wrap up. I do have a question for you, though.
Sure.
What do you want to do next on this ride?
I am a Little Golden Book fan, and I understand there's an Elvis Little Golden Book. So maybe we can look at that book. And the reason why I'd like to do this next is I feel like Little Golden Books in general are great tools to educate all ages, not just younger folks, but all ages. They tend to be well written. They tend to be easy to understand. If we do have Elvis fans out there, especially OG Elvis fans, this may be a great gift for grandchildren in their lives or younger children in their lives that they're around. That's why I would like to do the Little Golden Book biography, Elvis Presley, next, and see if we would recommend it as a great way to expose younger folks to Elvis Presley.
All right, that sounds good. We'll check it out next time, if there is a next time. Until then, may God bless you.
Thank you for listening.